Euzubillahimineşşeytanirracim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi şrah li sadri ve yessir li emri ve hlul min lisani yefkahu kavli. Rabbena la tuzigh qulubana ba'de iz hadaytana ve hab lana min ledunke rahmeten inneke entel vehhab. Allahumme erina'l hakka hakkan verzukna ittibahu ve erina'l batila batilan verzukna ijtinabahu. Allahumme nawwir qulubana veşrah sudurana bi nuril Kur'ani vel imani vel İslam. Allahümme salli ala seyyidina Muhammedin ve ala alihi ve ashabihi ve etbahi ve sellim. Selamun alaikum ve rahmetullahi ve berekatuh. Inshallah, we will continue our discussion on the miraculousness of Quran from the 25th word. And if you just give me a second, please, sorry. I apologize. Okay, let's continue, inshallah. I was saying we will continue with our discussion from the 25th word, and this is the second light, second beam, which includes 10 different aspects, 10 different types of eloquence, miraculous eloquence in Quran's style of exposition. And we are continuing with the 8th one. Last week we started the 8th point, and inshallah we will continue from there. And I believe we stop here. So the topic is hereafter, as far as I remember from the last week, and the miraculousness is being mentioned here is the relationship between what we see here and what we're going to see in hereafter, how they are miraculously tied, and how Quran exploits this relationship. And in order to explain us about the acts of hereafter, about the happenings of hereafter, the Quran talks about the acts, the actions, the doings, happenings of our life, and how giving such examples from our own life somehow get us closer to the understanding, accepting the truth of hereafter. So I will stop here for a few seconds to see if anybody wants to add anything in this topic before we start reading the text. I'm sure you have a lot to share since last week we had a very fruitful discussion. Okay, I see people are saving their comments for later moments. Okay, let's start reading the text. I will read the first paragraph and then look at the verses. Let's look at the verses together. To some further extent, it's only the first part of each ayah is given here. We will look at several other ayahs as well, inshallah. And I realized I forgot to share the sound. Okay, share sound. That's great. It sometimes happens also that the Quran mentions Almighty God's deeds of the hereafter in such a way that man may understand similar things in this world. So I guess the translation, it's kind of awkward. What is meant there, at least as far as I understand, is that the examples, similar things in this world is being explained, so that the Almighty God's deeds of hereafter will be explained. Then no possibility remains to deny them or deem them unlikely. And because the examples from this world are given, and these are the examples that we face every day, that we see their truthness every day, so there won't be any possibility to deny something of similar kind. An example are the surahs which begin when the sun is folded up, when the sky is cleft asunder. I didn't know any of these words, so it's like when the sky is opened by dividing it, kind of. When the sky is wide open, when the sky is rent asunder. So let's look at these surahs first together, inshallah, and then we can continue reading the text. And inshallah, this is the first one, is from Surah 81, which is At-Takwir, Surah Takwir. And inshallah, I will run the recitation, and let's hear some beautiful Quran together, inshallah, and then we can read the rough English translations.
إذا الشمس كورت وإذا النجوم انكدرت وإذا الجبال سيرت وإذا العشار عطلت وإذا الوحوش حشرت وإذا البحار سجرت وإذا النفوس زوجت وإذا الموءودة سئلت بأي ذنب قتلت وإذا الصحف نشرت وإذا السماء كشطت وإذا الجحيم سعرت وإذا الجنة أزلفت علمت نفس ما أحضرت.
Okay, let's look at the English translation. When the sun is wrapped up, when the stars fall dispersing, and this is the first ayah that we will that is included in the text, but in the Turkish version, the first ayah is given, and there is a kind of note next to it, which means and the ones following it. So the following ayahs are also being studied in the text, at least implicitly. But the first one is Ash-Shamsi Kuvirat. This is the one which is included in the text. When the sun is wrapped up, when the stars fall dispersing, and when the mountains are removed, and when full-term she-camels are neglected, and when pregnant camels are left unattended, and when the wild beasts are gathered, and when the seas are filled with flame or set on fire, and when the souls are paired. So there are all these contrasts, right? The water and the flame, and some other imagery, things like the wild beasts are gathering, pregnant camels are left unattended. I guess this is something giving impression that the important things are left unattended. The things that we care, things that fills our heart sometimes in a good way, we leave them all behind. and when the souls and their bodies are paired once more, or when the souls are paired, right? There's no body, I guess, only, yeah, nufusu. And when baby girls buried alive are asked for what sin she was killed, and when the pages are spread, this is also included in the text that we will read, inshallah. وَإِذَا سُحُفِ نُشِرَتْ. And when the sky is stripped away, and when the hellfire is fiercely flared up, and when the hellfire is set ablaze, and when the paradise is brought near, soul will know what it has brought. Let me read the other two ayahs as well. There are three surahs and ayahs, set of ayahs mentioned in the text. Then we can discuss them all together, inshallah. The second one is from the 82nd. So there's something wrong with my screen. Yes, 82nd Surah Al-Infitar. Again, let's listen, inshallah, first.
إذا السماء انفطرت وإذا الكواكب انتثرت وإذا البحار فجرت وإذا القبور بعثرت علمت نفس ما قدمت وأخرت.
Very similar content. Even the style is similar, although the recitation was kind of different between the two. You realize that the endings of the ayahs are all similar between these two verses, the surahs. And the first one, again, the one which is included in the text, إِذَا سَمَاءٌ فَتَرَتْ, when the sky splits open, and when the stars fall away, very similar with the previous surah, when the stars fall scattering, and when the seas are erupted. Now are erupted, before was full of flame or set on fire. When the seas are erupted, and when the graves are scattered, or when the graves spill out, then each soul, a soul, will know what it has put forth and kept back. And the third one, which is Surah 84, which is in Shikak. Let's again listen the recitation together, inshallah.
إذا السماء انشقت وأذنت لربها وحقت وإذا الأرض مدت وألقت ما فيها وتخلت وأذنت لربها وحقت يا أيها الإنسان إنك كادح إلى ربك كدحا فملاقيه.
Okay. And finally, the rough translations: when the sky bursts open, when the sky has split open, obeying its Lord as it must, and when the earth has been flatten out, or is flattened out, and ejects all its contents and becomes empty, and has cast out what within it, again, obeying its Lord as it must, surely you will be all judged. I guess we can include this as well, because we will read some parts about meeting the consequences of our actions in hereafter. O humanity, indeed you are laboring restlessly towards your Lord. So you are running towards your Lord and will eventually meet the consequences. Okay, let's stop here and listen your valuable comments, thoughts after listening these ayahs, reading these ayahs. What is the imagery that you see here with all these ayahs? When the sun is wrapped up, when the sky is breaks apart or splits open, when the sky bursts open, and the following ayahs, what do you think? Again, what kind of imagery you had in your mind when listening, hearing, reading these ayah? I think, please go ahead.
I mean, to me, it sounds like these ayat are describing occurrences that would completely upend my view of reality. The sun sets, but you never actually see it getting wrapped up in darkness, or you don't see the sky breaking open, or all these. These are things that I guess I've come to take for granted, that the sun will set, the sun will rise again. The sky is encompassing the earth. It's never, it's not gonna go away anytime soon. And so I guess maybe these ayat are making me question these assumptions I have about the world.
Jazakallah khairan. Ashanu, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. I guess one thing that I feel with these verses in these surahs, which, as you said, are very similar in what they evoke, the feeling that I get is of losing all of my points of support, losing that which I feel brings light into my life or guidance into my life, losing that which I feel grounds me or supports me, like the mountains, losing things that I find as mediators of support and strength, and feeling that sense of loss and disorientation. That makes me question, then to what must I find security in? I think it describes very much so this feeling of vulnerability and neediness. I mean, right now I'm sick and I feel pretty needy and vulnerable. And it's not the tea, the cough drops, nothing provides me the support that I need. And so I guess these verses just remind me of the reality that I have to look beyond the things themselves, or question, or rather utilize the moments in which things that I count on fail me. Things that I suppose, as Atik said, to be there for me are not there for me. And to then re-question, to what should I put my reliance upon? To what should I base my dependence upon?
Jazakallah khairan. Yes, all these feelings, all these questions which comes to our minds when we read and try to understand these verses. It is for sure shattering, breaking this ground that we stand on, as Atiq was saying, and as Ashanur was also reminding, that the things that I take as granted, the things that I enjoy, and knowing that they may be taken away from me, they will be taken away from me, and this feeling of insecurity coming with it. That's, I guess, one important set of emotions. At the same time, there are some other aspects in which we will study in this text, inshallah, how the things that are mentioned in these ayahs somehow are constantly reminded to us, to our minds. The sun, it's given, sun is taken. Sun is laid open, wide open in front of us, and then wrapped up. The similarities that we have in our life. And it's, I guess, easy to agree what Atiq said, which is when we read these ayahs, the first thing comes to mind is something extraordinary, something even conflicts with our reality, something that we are not used to see, something almost like a bold claim. That's for sure. I totally agree with this, which makes the text that we will read, I guess, even more interesting, more valuable, because the author will touch upon another aspect which is completely in contrast with what I said. Yes, these are things that are extraordinary, but in reality, our lives also have these extraordinary elements for eyes which are not blinded. Haidar, let's hear you, inshallah.
So I think one of the things that I think of when something is in front of me and there's a manifestation of some attributes of this entity, then I want to ascribe a property to it. And when I no longer see it, or when I see it diminished and it's no longer able to retain, quote unquote, retain its characteristic, retain its power, then I say, is it really responsible for what it's doing? So for me, when the sun in its splendor is removed and the warmth goes and the light goes away, I ask myself, is this of its own accord, or is it powerless? So I think of powerlessness for these entities when the language in the later verses, cleft asunder, mixed apart, all these things, where I think we're seeing that there are demonstrations of the fact that they are powerless. These are if you ascribe power to them, the power is being removed and taken away. So I'm reminded of this, and that just came to my mind. Just wanted to share that.
Jazakallah khairan, very important point as well, and I believe there will be a similar part in the text as well. The author will talk about the people who are worshipping sun. We can take it in different ways, of course. Historically, there have been some people worshipping sun. Maybe even today there are people clearly, explicitly, consciously worshipping sun. But at the same time, as you mentioned, ascribing all this power to sun is a means of worshipping. So how this worshipping to sun proved to be ridiculous through such ayahs. Haidar, I see your hand is still raised. If you okay, that was a mistake. Any other comments? There are a few more people among us, and I really value their comments as well, so I would love to hear them. Otherwise, we can continue reading the text. Okay, let's go back to text, inshallah. Okay, we said it sometimes happens also that the Quran mentions Almighty God's deeds of the hereafter in such a way that man may understand similar things in this world, or in such a way similarities between what happens in this world and what will happen is brought forward. Then no possibility remains to deny them or deem them unlikely. An example are the surahs which begin. We read these surahs. In these surahs, it mentions the mighty revolutions and dominical acts of disposal in the resurrection and great gathering in such a way that. So yes, these are revolutions, these are dominical acts. But they are mentioned in such a way that since man sees things similar to them in this world, since man sees similar things similar to them in this world, for example, in the autumn and spring, he accepts those revolutions easily. He accepts those revolutions easily, which cause dread to the heart and cannot be comprehended by mind. So those things that are mentioned cause dread to the heart, which is very true, and cannot be comprehended by mind, which is also true, like sky being split open or sun being folded up, wrapped up. It's just poetic, right? But as author says, because we experience similar things, it's not the first time we hear it's not the first time our mind encounters such a saying. Hence, we accept those revolutions easily. To provide even a summary of the meanings, of these three surahs would be very lengthy. So for now, we shall point out a single phrase by way of example. He will give a phrase from the first surah, the 10th ayah, when the passages are laid open. I guess it's Iza Suhufi Nushirat. Iza Suhufi Nushirat, when the pages are laid open or distributed, maybe. Nushirat. Made available. Right. In Turkish, I don't know if it has the same connotation in Arabic as well, but in Turkish we use nushirat, neshriyat or neshrat, whatever, to publish a book, for instance, right? To distribute it, to make it available. If I'm mistaken, Yusuf, please correct me, but yeah. When the pages are laid open, expresses the following. At the resurrection, all the deeds of everyone will be published, written on pages. So yeah, it's the same meaning. The deeds of everyone will be published, written on pages, being very strange on its own. So when I say something like that, all your deeds, everything you did, but everything, no exception, will be written on pages. What would be your response? What would be your reaction? Any volunteer? Any honest volunteer? No, I guess everybody's afraid, scared, saying something wrong. Okay, Atik, please go ahead.
I mean, I'd have to find some fire so I could burn it.
Okay, that's an interesting approach. I was expecting more like something Abdurrahman would say. Abdurrahman, you also raised your hand, right? Am I mistaken? This is not a phishing attempt. So genuine thing that I saw your hand raised, but anyway, probably I was mistaken. So what I was thinking is that, Suhail, he asks his traditional question, which is, what is the question again? The question was, when we read something like, all the deeds of everyone will be published, written on pages, like everything you did, everything you have done in your life, with no exception, will be written on some pages and given to you. What would be your reaction? Like, is it something absurd to believe? Is it something, just a metaphorical, speaking? Like everything I did written on pages, it sounds so exaggerated, because no pages, no books will be enough to have them all. Suhail, please go ahead.
Assalamualaikum. It's a well, to answer your question, I don't think it's an exaggeration, because if I think about it, my ability to know, I'm able to know exactly what I'm doing at any moment. And for the most part, I can remember, especially the choices I've made, the most important choices I've made in my life. So this ability to know what I'm doing at the moment I'm doing it, and then the ability to remember those choices potentially down the road, speaks to the fact that if I know what I'm doing and I can remember what I've done, then he must know what I have, am, and will ever do, in this life. So I don't think it's far-fetched. In fact, it's necessary. Otherwise, I can't explain my own ability to remember, to know, and by definition, when one makes a choice, by its own definition, there's a knowing. Like no one makes a choice. Somebody may make an ignorant choice in that they're ignorant of what the consequence of their choice may be, or what other choices may be available. But nobody's ignorant of the fact that they are making a choice. At least if somebody is sane and rational. No one, everybody knows exactly, what they're doing. At least that's my opinion. Some people will claim otherwise, but I think the vast majority of people will accept the fact that everybody knows exactly what they're doing, right or wrong. That's what I would say to that, to that statement. And it's interesting when he quotes the verse, when the pages are laid open. I mean, it's interesting. Just my ability to remember and my ability to know at any given moment looks to the resurrection, and not only my only bodily resurrection, but sort of the resurrection of everything I've ever done. It's laid bare before, because I already knew it. It's not a surprise. I'm just being presented what I already know, and my memory is that sort of recording device. It's not as if I'm going to be presented something I didn't know already. No, I already knew it. I'm just being shown it. And that's what I take away from this verse, and to answer your question.
That's a great point. Very good example. Like our memory, our ability to remember things. This is the conscious part, right? Like we remember things, and they are brought to our consciousness. And there are things that we remember in a way, but we are not even conscious of them. Our current actions are quote unquote shaped by our previous actions, and our body is shaped by our previous deeds. If you are exercising every day, your body will show it. Like the pages, a page will be laid open in front of everybody. Your brain is shaped, all the connections in your brain are shaped by your previous deeds. So everything is being constantly recorded. Nothing is lost. Sometimes you are conscious of it, sometimes you are not conscious of it, but this recording is always there. When a careful eyes look at you, study you, your body, your brain, your the ideas would know a lot where you have been through. And this is true for everything, right? You look at an object in any part of the universe, and you know, at least to some extent, about its history, where it has been, gone through, what happened to it, what kind of history it has. It is being recorded. Being very strange on its own. So when you first read it, when you first hear it, it sounds strange, and it does. The mind cannot grasp this matter. But as the surah indicates, so here comes what Suhail shared with us. The same way as in the resurrection of the spring are things similar to other points. The things similar to this laying open of the pages are quite clear. For all fruit-bearing trees or flowering plants perform deeds, acts, and duties, and in whatever way they display the divine names and glorify God, they perform worship. So everything in life, for example, the fruit-bearing trees or flowering plants, they have certain acts, certain duties, and they do perform worship as a means of displaying certain divine names and glorifying their source. All these deeds are written in their seeds together with their life histories. So very interesting. All these deeds are written in their seeds together with their life histories and emerge in another spring in another place. So whatever happened to them, their life stories, we will see it written in another place where they are sprout out. Just as they mention most eloquently the deeds of their mothers and stock through the tongues of the shapes and the forms they display. So they publish the pages of their deeds through their branches, leaves, flowers, and fruits. So when you look at their shape, the shape of a plant, for instance, you will know about the deeds of its mother and father, metaphorically speaking. In the same way, when you look at its parts, the newly emerging parts, for instance, the branches, leaves, flowers, and fruits, you will know about its history. Thus, the one who carries out this wise, preserving, planned, nurturing, benevolent work is he who says, when the pages are laid open. So that's a really interesting, together with what Suhail mentioned, these are really interesting examples. When I was reading first time this part, it reminded me the truthful aspect of this science of evolution and other sciences related to it, for instance, the genetics, genetic diversity, genetics, the heritability, heritage, anyway, all these things. Yes, maybe these truthful aspects are being used for evil purposes today, but they do have something truthful in them, which is when you look at a living organism, when you study its genes, for instance, you will know a lot about its history, how it is, what kind of things happen to it, maybe even thousands years ago, what kind of struggles it went through. You will know all about this because everything is written. As author says, when you study a flower, you will know about its origin, you will know about its past, because it's written there. If its parents went through some struggles and then new skills were given to them, you will know about it when you study their quote-unquote evolutionary history. And the same fact here is used to prove the existence of hereafter, which is very interesting because we hear the same fact is being used to deny existence of hereafter. And as we studied last week, some of you may remember, when such truth is being used for denial, it is usually, most of the, maybe every time, is in the form of non-existence, a form of speculation. So for instance, here we see something that exists. We experience this preservation, right? Preserving, act of preserving, we observe, which brings to mind that there must be someone who preserves. We see something that exists and we conclude about it. To conclude again something, another thing that exists. But when it is being used for denial, it's usually starts from that something that exists, speculates something about it which we do not observe, which we do not experience at all. And from this speculation, further speculate about something again we don't know anything about. And because you start from an evidence in reality, but make this jump between reality and the speculation, it sounds as if you are doing something respectful, something scientific, let's say, while it is nothing but just speculation. Okay, I talked a lot, so you would agree, I assume. Hence, your help is needed here. Who would help me to have some bread? We don't have a compassionate crowd today. Alhamdulillah, at least we have your presence. That's good enough for now. Suhail, please go ahead.
What's interesting, he says the mind cannot grasp this matter. What I found interesting about this is that, going through what you were saying about the record of the history of things, and in everything, it's reflected in the material world. While one is able to sort of intellectually grasp it, it's to actually comprehend it is beyond imagination. The fact that everything has a history that's recorded down to the most minute detail. The human mind, as he says, the intellect cannot truly grasp really the absolute nature of knowledge, in a sense. There's no way. It's impossible. So, in some sense, this verse is very sort of awe-inspiring, because if you really think about it, it speaks to everything, not just myself, but when the pages are laid open, it's not just saying my own pages, but the pages of everything, past, present, and future, and all there was, is, and will ever be. When you think about it, I think this is like the Quranic way of saying, or trying to give the human being an ability to somehow, at some level, comprehend absolute knowledge, even though it's impossible to. But to try to give an example, an author demonstrating their knowledge through pages of a book in the same way. But thinking about pages ad infinitum, how many pages there can be, let's say for just something as simple as like a fly, and the history of that fly. If you trace back the history of a fly from where it came from and where that came from and where it came from and so on and so forth, you would eventually end up at the inception of the universe. Same thing with any creature in existence, for that matter, or any particle or any human being. So it's honestly, it's quite awe-inspiring, and one can only but submit after understanding that.
Jazakallah khairan. Yeah, that's a really important part, because as you said, when we read these explanations, these examples, for instance, it does sound as if we understand them, like what is the big deal? Like the pages are laid open, yeah, just like the seeds, just like the genetic codes, or just like the shape. So when you look at the shape of the rock, for instance, underwater, you have an understanding, a kind of understanding of what it has been gone through all these water, all these splashes, like the waves that touched on the surface. So what is so difficult with it, we say? But at the same time, I guess we shouldn't forget that these are just similar examples. Yes, these examples we can understand, but when it comes to what is being said, at least literally, so we do experience all these different examples of resurrection, for instance, right? No doubt. We studied many times during the springtime. Every examples with these plants, all these examples of me being resurrected every day, every moment, even. We have these examples and it's easier to grasp. But when it comes to the resurrection, I'm going into grave and graves are being wide opened and I coming out of the grave resurrected. This is something, my mind having difficulty to accept, maybe to understand. But through these examples, again, we are prepared for acceptance. It becomes easier to accept. We say, yes, it's not that different. And all these examples are given to me. I guess the key point here is the given to me. So just like an educator and a professor giving you some examples, preparing you to let's say, a more difficult question or to a new chapter. When you look at the problem that you are given, you say, oh, yeah, I solved similar examples before. So even though I cannot solve it right now, even if I fail to solve it, I know that it's not impossible because I solved before similar things. I guess in the same way, once you realize that all these things that happen in your life, they are there for a purpose, to teach you something, to train you in something. When you realize that, when you accept that, then when something like the pages are laid open, narrated to you or articulated to you, you say, yeah, I've been trained in this regard. I have a training in this. I did a PhD in resurrection, yes, all my life. So it is something I can, tackle with. It is something I can manage to understand. I have the education, I have the training. Any comments, any questions, disagreements? Vikan, you said this, but I don't think it's quite true. Ryan? We have a quiet crowd today. Okay, let's continue with the text then. You have to speak one way or another, just don't forget that. You can make analogies with other points from this and deduce them if you can. So it gave us just one example about the pages are being open. To help you, I shall say the following. So he will give us another example. The phrase, when the sun is folded up, is a shamsu kuwirat. Is a brilliant metaphor meaning rolling up and gathering up. So the metaphor is going to the word kuvirat, takwir, which is mastar. Kuvirat has, it says, although the translation forget to include it, the phrase, the kuvirat, being folded, rolling up, gathering up, is a brilliant metaphor, meaning rolling up and gathering up. So too, it alludes to similar things similar to it. The first, so it's counting these similar things. Almighty God drew back the veils of non-existence, the ether and the skies, and taking from the treasury of his mercy a lamp like a sparkling, brilliant lamp, like a sparkling, brilliant to illuminate the world. Okay, so it's a difficult text. It says, think about the sun in the first place, like it illuminates our world. And this light is actually coming, or the sun itself, it's coming from non-existence, right? It's the veils of non-existence drew back. So somebody made the decision of its existence. Before, it was just the veil of non-existence, the ether, the skies, whatever you can think of, right? And they are all wrapped up. So when the sun rises, right, we see the veil of the sky is being wrapped up, and the lights coming from the sun is reaching us just like a lamp, which is nothing but from the treasury of his mercy. When the world is closed, he shall rewrap that brilliant in its veils and remove it. So in the same way, the author says, you can think that just like it is given to us by wrapping up the skies or ether or non-existence, please do not get lost in the ontological discussions of whether the ether is the right word or not. It's not our job here. But all these things other than sun, or the things that sun resides in, they are all folded up, wrapped up, and the sun is given to us. The same way, it may be rewrapped and taken back from us. Any comments so far about this first example, similarity? Okay, the second, you are stubborn, aren't you? The second, the sun is an official charge with spreading out the wares of its light. I have no idea what wares is. I even look at the dictionary. I couldn't understand. I couldn't find the right definition for the wares. There were some definitions which are not relevant. But I guess it doesn't matter. It's like spreading out its light, okay? And wrapping the head of the earth alternately in light and darkness. So I guess what I understand from it, the face of the earth or head of the earth is being painted either by light or darkness. Light or darkness in a, the rotating manner, sometimes dark, sometimes light. Every evening it gathers up its wares and conceals them. Every evening it gathers up its, okay, let's refer to Atik's translation, the definition of wares. Things a merchant, the seller, right, sells valuable things, let's say, that it brings. Every evening it gathers up its wares and conceals them. So take away its lights, as if wrapping them up, right? Folding them and collecting. And sometimes it does scant business due to the veil of a cloud, or sometimes cloud veils it, and we only see a glimpse of its light. And sometimes the moon draws a veil over its face and somewhat hinders its transactions. Then it adjusts the account books of its wares and transactions. Interesting sentence. Then it adjusts the account books of its wares and transactions. So when everything, like when the lights goes away, the sun's making almost the bookkeeping of what it sold, what kind of transactions it made, and so on. Similarly, a time will come when this official will resign from its post. So the sun is an official given to us with a duty, and it does its duty every day, gives us the light, and then folding up, wrapping up its lights, evening time. And there will be a time where this official will resign from its post, even if there is no cause for its dismissal. So it might be even the case, so this is how I read it, even if it is the case that we don't see any reason for its dismissal. So it might be just out of sudden, due to the enlargement of two black spots on its face. So this is just an example. Again, in Turkish, it's more obvious that this is just an example. Otherwise, author is not making any claim about, oh yeah, this will happen. So it's like there's an enough reason to it be possible. Due to the enlargement of two black spots on its face, I don't know about these two black spots of the sun, maybe there are, as has begun, I guess in his time, there was such a scientific breakthrough or finding about these black spots on the face of the sun. With divine permission, the sun will take back the light that it spreads at a dominical command and wrap it around its own head, which I believe, I might be wrong, which I believe an allusion to the phases that stars go through, becoming the white dwarf, and then supernova, black hole, and so on and so forth. With divine permission, the sun will take back the light that it spreads at a dominical command and wrap it around its own head. It will be told, no work remains for you on earth. Go to hell and burn those who worship you. go to hell and burn those who worship you and insulted an obedient official like yourself by inferring you were disloyal. So the people saying that, the sun acts by its own, its existence, does not rely on a creator. So by itself, it's a mighty creature, a mighty thing, not a creature, mighty thing, and so on and so forth. And by saying this, author says, they are insulting you. They are denying your duty. The fact that you are an obedient official, they deny that, and it's a big insult. So go and burn them. It will read out the degree of when the sun is folded up through its black spotted face. So again, as an example, when, for instance, if we imagine the sun becoming maybe a black hole, this fact, or any star actually becoming a black hole, maybe it's an example of Iza Shamsu Kuvirat. Okay, this is the text. So I don't have any more text to read. And I already shared most of my comments. So now you either speak, stop being quiet, stop burns, or we can end our discussion early. I don't mind either, but of course prefer the first. Any comments about the text, about the things that we studied? So after all these examples, okay, let me pose a question, help you. After all these examples, what do you think about similarity, whether you accept it or not? Just because, author said there are similarities, I guess it's not fair to say, okay, yeah, I believe because author said so. What is your state? Like, author mentioned all these similarities between what we see, what we experience, what seems easy to understand to mind, and the acts of hereafter, the resurrection. When you read these ayahs again, when the sun is wrapped up or put out or folded, when the stars fall dispersing, and when the mountains are removed, and when the full-term she-camels are neglected, and when the wild beasts are gathered, when the seas are filled with flame, and when the souls are paired, so on and so forth. When you read these ayahs again, do you have this feeling of familiarity now? Suhail, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Yes, because the Quran is not, while the Quran is, at least to me, aim is for man to look beyond the world and the eventuality of this world and therefore the hereafter. But it's as if, the hereafter is the cloth from which the entire world is cut from. Or the world is simply a transient reflection of the hereafter. And so everything is symbolic of the hereafter, as he points out. When the sun is put out, or I should say the hour in this case, in that, just the alteration of night and day, the setting and rising of the sun, it's all symbolism. And in one sense, it points to the necessity of the creator, because in any point does it always refer back to something else, something beyond the world itself? In that nothing exists just to refer to itself, but everything refers to something beyond itself, and not just something beyond itself, but something that is similar, or that is similar to what it is now. It looks to the sort of the blueprint, or the event, in a sense, the event being the hour, if you want to call it that, or the hour with a capital H. But in a sense, every moment is the hour, or is taking place, and just like every time the sun is put out or sets, that is looking to when the sun is set, essentially at the setting of the universe. Yeah, it's all like, I think the best example I can think of, like, is in, let's say, like in math, a fractal. The deeper you go, you see the same pattern over and over again. Like there is no end point. There's no point where you reach where it's like, oh, this is the end. It's just the pattern repeating over and over and over again. And that pattern looks to the pattern, or I guess, in one sense, I mean, Nursi points to how things are cut from the cloth of divine knowledge, and the same way, in some sense, things are, this world is cut from the cloth of the resurrection and hereafter, in some sense, in the same way. It's inescapable. So, like, I'm not living in some sort of independent reality. This reality is really just, it only exists because the he and the hereafter exists. Otherwise, there would be no such thing as me and this world. And so I'm sort of just a reflection, or an image that manifests in this world. So I find that interesting. I guess another example I could think of is, I don't know how appropriate it is, but it's like almost a concentric circle also, in that you can't, like, everything every point encloses another point, in that they're all interrelated. You can't, there's no point where you can escape from what the reality of things mean. There's no moment. There's no setting of the sun in my life where I can say it does not point to the setting of the universe, or the destruction of the universe. It's impossible. And honestly, it's very interesting when I think about it, in that I may say, like, oh, the day's over, or so many days have passed in my life, but I mean, every moment, every night that the sun sets, that means something far greater than what I appreciate it to be.
Jazakallah khairan. I like the example of this, the fractal, that there is no end. No matter how deep you go, you see the same truth being revealed, the same truth being manifested there. And everything we read in Quran is manifested in our life, one way or another, sometimes written on the mountains, sometimes written in the actions of a baby, sometimes written in the food that we eat, but it's always there. Okay, it seems there are no other comments. Again, I don't want to continue with the 9th point, so I'm sure we cannot give its due in such a short time. Mohammed Said, let's conclude with you, inshallah. That's very...
Assalamu alaikum uh, I would like to share, inshallah, some of the feelings and reflections came to me when you were reading the last part, which starts with the second. And by actually asking the question, what does where's mean? It helped me to concentrate on that word. And through that word, I thought that the author is opening the verse in an interesting way. He's sharing his understanding of this verse in a way that um, it speaks very interestingly, and I will try to share what is that, what is it that attractive for me in his sharing. When the Quran, it means when the Quran speaks about the sun and it's being put out or rolling up, it is attracting my attention, calling my attention to the sun here and now, and its light be reaching the things in the world, reaching to me, reaching all the leaves, everything on the face of the earth, by reminding me, by calling my mind uh, to pay attention to the sunlight being rolled out. Actually, it is kind of um, calling the opposite, which is, the presence of the sun and its um, light beams reaching the things. Um, it means the sun, if the sun is not there by itself, if its heat is arranged, has to be arranged by something other than the sun, means its light beams are planned and organized or designed by that one, not the sun. It warmed my heart up to have this understanding of the sun. It means the sunlight, the existence of the sun is um, kind of pointing to that one, the will behind the sunlight, and it's each and every single being which is receiving the sunlight, is actually pointing to the one that that spreads the sunlight to it, not the sun itself, as the owner of the, you know, as the author uses this metaphor as a merchant and spreading its merchandise and then collecting them up. It's definitely not the table that the merchant is using, is the organizer of the merchandise, but the one who is selling, who is the owner of the merchandise. So in that sense, this whatever the things on the face of the earth or in the galaxy, the sunlight is reaching to, it is meant, it is planned, it is willed to be to receive the sunlight. So by referring to its um, disappearance, actually it calls my mind to its apparent light doesn't belong to it. It tells me that it doesn't. The sunlight, whenever I see that sunlight is reflecting on something, it is planned and programmed by the one who is the owner of the existence of the sun. And and on the other hand, which is related to this topic hereafter, by acknowledging, realizing that it is given existence, and its existence depends on someone, it calls to mind that the sunlight has an end, but the giver of this of the power of the sunlight, the owner of the existence of the sun, and it's all merchandises, it's all light beams. That one is not in with the same nature of the sun. So its existence is the real existence. It calls me to be kind of rely on that one, to be connected that one. And I think in there I might have the I might be able to experience the hereafter, or unending existence or eternity here and now, by having that connection with that one. Thank you.
Thank you. What you said, especially the last part, reminded me the ayah, which can be roughly translated as everything will perish and only his face will remain. And yeah, understanding sun and its light and how it is coming out of compassion, it's really, as you said, warm our hearts, fill our hearts with its light, and it gives us rest. So our hearts find rest, a resting place with the remembrance of its creator, its maker. Jazakallah khairan. Okay, let's finish here, inshallah, stop, and next week we can continue from the 9th point, inshallah. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. الفاتحة.